Our top story this morning: an unprecedented crisis that has hit the Indian Navy. Admiral D.K. Joshi has bowed out after a spate of naval disasters in premier warships that put a serious question mark over Navy. But is the Navy Chief, whose resignation was immediately accepted, being made a scapegoat?
Admiral D.K. Joshi quitting hours after a mishap on board INS Sindhuratna. The resignation came as two sailors remained unaccounted for after the disaster and are feared dead. A stern message from a deeply unhappy defence minister may have been the trigger for Admiral Joshi.
The Navy was asked by the Ministry of Defence to submit an immediate report on the accident on board INS Sindhuratna, but this isn't the first request that the MOD had made as far as the Navy was concerned. Over the last 6 to 7 months, 10 incidents have happened, and the Ministry of Defence has been making repeated requests to the Indian Navy to keep the Ministry of Defence abreast on each of these incidents. We hear from our sources that the MOD was deeply concerned over no report on those 10 accidents over the last 6 months. So already there was a great deal of friction between the Ministry of Defence and the Indian Naval Headquarters. Our sources tell us the MOD sent a very stern message to the Navy to provide full updates on all of those inquiries, and this is not only because of its responsibility in the issue, but also because of the very negative publicity and the media scrutiny that was being focused on the Navy and the MOD leadership.
But as Joshi bows out after taking moral responsibility, questions are being asked about the defence minister. While the chief owned up, AK Antony is far from taking responsibility. Coming just 6 months after the INS Sindhurakshak tragedy that killed 18 personnel, the fresh mishap has sent shivers through the Navy's leadership. Veterans too have expressed concern, questioning why the government is silent despite a spate of mishaps haunting the army.
In the best tradition, he has held himself accountable and set a new benchmark for accountability in this country for others to follow. But the buck does not stop at him. It is not his fault that he is not getting equipment. It is the Defence Ministry which is not giving the equipment.
I would say that it is in keeping with the highest traditions of the service, wherein, as the Naval Chief, he has accepted what might be described as institutional responsibility.
The Chief of the Naval Staff has said that he takes moral responsibility for a series of accidents that have plagued the Indian Navy. His resignation came hours after he met Raksha Mantri AK Antony. Sources in Ministry of Defence telling headlines today, there was a lot of pressure on the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral D.K. Joshi, to put in his papers. There was an intense standoff between Naval Headquarters and the Ministry of Defence, with the Ministry of Defence accusing the Navy of not sharing information about the naval accidents that were taking place.
So is it time for the Defence Minister to own up as well? With Shivarur and Gaurav Sawant in Delhi, Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
And Headlines Today Deputy Editor Shivarur now breaks down the reason behind why fingers are being pointed at India's Defence Minister.
The services have been crying themselves hoarse for over a decade now about the modernization of their equipment. And remember, modernization has very much to do with safety, with incidents that have been happening across the three services. Take, for example, the Indian Air Force's demand for modern fighters. 10 years ago, the Indian Air Force had said that it requires fighters because its old MiG-21s and other fighters are getting obsolete. We still don't have a contract. That's one of the things that Antony has simply been sitting on. The Ministry of Defence is still sitting on a file for Scorpion submarines which have been delayed by over 5 years. They were supposed to come in 2012. They will only come in 2017. And these are modern submarines that the Indian Navy desperately requires. No action whatsoever on the Navy's demand for quality manpower. The Navy every single year cries itself hoarse as far as manpower issues are concerned. These issues have not been met. Take, for example, the Navy's demand for multi-role helicopters, both anti-submarine warfare helicopters as well as light utility helicopters. The Indian Ministry of Defence, under that man, AK Antony, shows amazing, charming alacrity to buy VVIP helicopters for its netas and dignitaries, but it still hasn't bought crucially required helicopters required for the Indian Navy, the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force, because there are several other issues. No such issues when the VVIP helicopter deal was signed, and we know how that actually turned out. Since the Bofors scam, not a single piece of field artillery has been purchased by the Indian Army, and this man has been in the helm for over 6 years now. Not a single artillery deal has actually been signed. Every time an artillery deal goes through, it is aborted and it is started all over again, as a result of which the Indian Army struggles with vintage artillery pieces.